Even in the wake of something as dramatic as last week's DC riots, so much of the speechifying and legislative maneuvering that takes place on any given day in the nation's capital, even and especially during the era of Trump, is predictable and superficial. Representatives prance and preen. Senators fall in line behind the party elders. Sure, there are those who break ranks every now and then, but it seems rarely enough to matter to the overall outcome. And then there are legislators like Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who take a keen interest in structures and systems, and who have little time for niceties and casting votes that do little more than send a message rather than produce anything actionable. Accordingly, the Democratic Congresswoman from New York has once again spun up the right-wing rage machine, this time over her willingness to call out the extremes, the insanity, and the misinformation that permeates the U.S. media ecosystem. To the point that, well, she just came right out and said it during an Instagram live session this week. Talking straight to the camera at her more than 8 million Instagram followers, she confirmed that the possibility of a congressional investigative commission is in the exploratory stage, the idea being that it would probe the extent to which an out-of-control, media-driven narrative fueled the attack on the Capitol. She didn't explicitly point to this connection, but it's hard not to assume that the logic reflects the fact that, if the president was impeached for incitement of the rioting, why shouldn't scrutiny also turn to other sources that may have also incited violence in their own way? We're going to have to figure out how we rein in our media environment, so you can't just spew disinformation and misinformation, the Congresswoman said during the Instagram Live, adding that media literacy and the lack thereof is a part of what happened here. It's one thing to have different opinions, but it's another thing entirely to just say things that are false, so that's something we're looking into. Despite the right-wing counter-narrative that quick developed in response to this news, what Representative Ocasio-Cortez is talking about here is not some sort of extension of the big tech crackdown on Trump and on the extreme rhetoric, up to and including the death threats and threats of violence, exhibited by Trump supporters across myriad platforms, apps, and digital services. This is, rather, a media story, one that's been a long time coming, and each day that passes brings a feverish news cycle fueled in part by outlets like Fox FOXA, Newsmax and others that only reinforce what the Congresswoman said this commission will try to accomplish. When and if it gets off the ground.